Testing, 1, 2, 3. And I want to get my video.
Yes, Bhante. Yeah.
Okay, shall we start?
Yes, Bhante.
Okay, so welcome back to the contemplation of the body retreat. And we've started with the practice of mindfulness of breathing as a way of grounding mindfulness in the present. And so I'll just repeat briefly the instructions that I gave in the morning. So we are first setting mindfulness up in a general way in the body. And then once the mindfulness is established in the body, then we turn to the breath, the awareness of the in and out process of breathing in whichever place one can observe the breath most clearly and distinctly. And I should make some statement here about the way I use the places for observing the breath. Strictly speaking, in the Theravada commentarial tradition, when you do mindfulness of breathing, it's said that the focus point for observing the breath is the area around the nostrils or the upper lip where the air comes in and out. But what I found from, speaking from my own experience and from hearing from other people, that in the earliest stages of practice, it's difficult to focus, to observe the breath in that area. So I offer people a choice of places for observing the in and out breathing, either around the nostrils with the expansion and contraction of the chest, or with the rise and fall of the abdomen. But what I would suggest is that if you've chosen the expansion and contraction or the rise and fall of the abdomen, if you feel that you're becoming well established in observing the breath in those areas, you try to move the attention to the region around the nostrils where the air comes in and out. It's a much more subtler object, but in my experience, it tends more effectively towards the unification of the mind. But if you find it difficult, well, first, if you move to that area, you have to be a little patient with it. It doesn't come easily. So try to be patient, to follow the breath coming in and out. But after some time, if you don't find it easy, then go back to the expansion and contraction or the rise and fall of the abdomen. In this, the kind of practice that we're doing in this retreat, we're not aiming at an intense, one-pointed unification of mind, but rather our purpose for this retreat is, in this phase of this retreat, is to establish the mindfulness, to have it well established in the present. And we're going to use that present moment mindfulness as the foundation or platform for undertaking the excursions into the other aspects of contemplation of the body. Okay, so at this point, I can ask whether anybody has any simple and practical questions. I don't want to take any kind of theoretical or doctrinal questions, but anything unclear about the method of practice. I think somebody will feel the questions and present them to me. Oh, I see some hands are up. Okay, I guess I call the people with the hands. I'm not sure how to do this. Okay, Mariam in California.
I'm trying to start my video, but it's not letting me. So
No, I think you can start the video.
Yeah, so you can't see me. I'm sorry.
I hear you.
You hear me. Okay. Thank you, Bhante. I wanted to understand with the practice this morning is at the beginning of the session is easier to focus on the breath and be mindful of it.
Yeah.
But as the time passes, the mind just slips into like going back to the avenue of thoughts and stuff. And I find myself going there more than the beginning. Is there something that, what faculty I need to be focusing on in order not to slip so much into the thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a very common experience and a natural experience. Because when you first start the practice, there's a kind of initial curiosity and enthusiasm and a certain initial burst of energy. But then as you sort of slide into the practice, then the observation of the breath tends to become mechanical and automatic, and therefore the level of attentiveness, of alertness to the breath tends to diminish, and in that way thoughts and wandering starts to slip into the practice. So the antidote to that, in fact, I mentioned that during the morning session.
Yes.
When you see the mind slipping into that automatic or mechanical in, out, with a rather low degree of intensity, then with each in-breath, challenge yourself to be mindful of the whole in-breath. And with each out-breath, challenge yourself to be mindful of the whole out-breath. And try to make the determination, I'm going to follow the whole in-breath. I'm going to follow the whole out-breath.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And you'll find that after you'll succeed with the first few determinations, but then again, the mind is going to find the excuses to slip away and start wandering into the realm of thoughts. This is what the practice is about. It's not that you just make up the mind, I'm going to get into deep concentration and it's going to follow automatically. But it's a gradual process of sort of taming the wild bull by tying it to the post of mindfulness. And when you tie the bull to the post of mindfulness, it's always going to start trying to pull away, to break away from the post. But again and again, you have
need
to
to
pull
bring
the bull back to the post.
The challenge is, as you mentioned, is like the duration of the meditation. The first 10, 15 minutes is great. And then after that, the mind seems to go into the autopilot, and that's where the alertness needs to come in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Shashwat Malik. Shashwat Malik. Oh, I have to ask to unmute.
Bhante, can you hear me?
I think you're good.
Bhante, am I audible?
Yeah, you're good now.
Okay. My question is it not enough to just feel the breath at my nostrils? Is it important to also note or label or be aware that this is an in breath, this is an out breath?
At this point, we'll be following the in-breath and out-breath. So do make that distinction of in-breath and out-breath.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Bhante.
So if we follow the instructions in the Satipatthana Sutta, it says, ever mindful, one breathes in, ever mindful, one breathes out. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, and once you ask the question, when you finish the question, then you lower the hand. Okay, Vivian. Vivian.
Hello,
Yeah,
can
go
you
ahead.
hear me? First of all, I'd like to say thank you for your instruction. I found it very clear and helpful. But I am struggling a little bit with fatigue, which has been quite a common issue for me.
Struggling with what?
Fatigue, sort of drowsiness.
Drowsiness.
Yes. And I have a thyroid issue, which exacerbates that feeling, that tendency. And it's getting a little bit worse as I get older. And I try and just be aware of the physical sensations of drowsiness. But I do at times find it quite a challenge to stay mindful through that drowsiness. And I just wondered what your advice would be.
Yeah, under normal conditions, what sometimes we say is that if one is feeling drowsy, first one should make, the first remedy is to try to make the mental determination to dispel the drowsiness. If that mental determination is not immediately successful, what you could do is rub the palms together and rub the palms over the face vigorously to try to stimulate the body again. And then go back to observing the breathing. Yeah, sometimes we would say that if that doesn't work, then you could even get up and go to the faucet and take some cold water and splash the cold water over the face in order to invigorate the mind. So you could try those remedies, but first try to maintain the sitting position and just use the force of will to dispel the drowsiness. Just give that a try, either using the force of will or else rubbing the palms together and rubbing them vigorously over the face. Okay, Wiley. Is it Wiley or Willie?
Wiley.
Okay.
Thank you, Bhante. On the mentally verbalized noting, at what point do you stop making mentally verbalized notings? What would you recommend?
If you could really follow the in-breath and out-breath without the mental noting, then the mental noting is not necessary. But I recommend the mental noting because it helps to serve as a device for keeping the mind on the in-breaths and out-breaths. So it's a useful device. It's not a kind of fixed, invariable rule. So it's something you have to sort of experiment with yourself. And if you can observe the in-breath and out-breath well without the mental noting, then you don't have to use it. But what I found in my own experience, when I think that I could drop the mental noting and just observe the in-breath, out-breath on its own, after a very short while, the mind will start to roam and wander. So for me, I find the mental noting to be useful. But you experiment with yourself. And as I said, it's a matter of, personal temperament and ability, not a fixed, unshakable rule.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, we can get now into the practice. Okay, so let us. Ooh, I did not bring my clock. Yeah, there's a clock there. Oh, but this, yeah, I wanted the one with the, yeah, these are the same actually. If you go to my room, there's a round. Okay, so let us begin by taking the sitting position. Establish a firm and steady base with the pelvic region, the buttocks against the seat. The torso held straight and upright, firm, but not stiff or rigid. Hands on the lap, right hand over the left, thumbs lightly touching. Or if you prefer, you could have the hands on the knees. Nose perpendicular to the navel. Mouth closed, eyes lightly closed. Chin pulled in, very slight angle. And first, establish mindfulness in the body. Then when you're ready, you can move the mind to the base where you'll be observing the in and out, the process of in and out breathing, whichever you prefer, around the nostrils, with the expansion and contraction with the expansion and contraction of the chest, with the rise and fall of the abdomen, and then try to follow each in-breath, each out-breath as continuously, as consistently, as clearly as possible. Grounding the mind in the present moment through the breath. And using the mental note as a kind of tuning device, anchoring device. When breathing in, the note mindful, in. When breathing out, mindful, out. Or at the abdomen, mindful, rising. Mindful, falling. Thoughts will arise. And sometimes they'll come in waves, more and more thoughts. Sometimes there'll be lighter periods, infrequent, disturbing thoughts. That's part of the process, just recognize it. But coming back again and again to the breath. And if the mind gets lost among the thoughts, chatting with them, following the thoughts up, pondering the thoughts, as soon as you recognize this, drop the thought and then come back first to the broad general awareness of the body. Settle into the mindful awareness of the body. And then when the breath resurfaces, return to following the breath. Okay, we'll continue in silence. And be especially observant of the juncture between in-breath and out-breath, and between out-breath and in-breath, because that is often the place, the moment where the thoughts start jumping in and cluttering the mind. So that's where you have to be particularly vigilant. If you find that the observation of the breath is starting to become mechanical and sort of autopilot, remember you can sort of restore stronger and sharper mindfulness by challenging yourself with the in-breath, making the determination, I will be mindful of the entire in-breath. With the out-breath, you challenge yourself, I will be mindful of the entire out-breath, from the beginning through the middle to the end. And then with the in-breath, again, challenging yourself, I'll be mindful of the entire in-breath, from its beginning through its duration to its end. But if the mind is becoming too tight, too constricted, too narrow, what you can do is drop the specific and narrow point of focus on the breath and let the attention, the mindfulness spread through the whole body. And for a few minutes, just be aware of the entire body as it's breathing in and out. Then once the mindfulness is reestablished in this sort of extensive or broad way, then you can return to the more specific point of focus. Okay, you can relax now, relax the sitting position in the usual way. And then end the session by rubbing the palms together, rubbing the palms over the face, top of the head, back of the head, back of the neck, shoulders, back of the shoulders. And then come down the lower back to the buttocks and then massage that area, stimulate the circulation. Then down the thighs to the knees, and again massage the knees. And then you can come down to the feet and the toes. Okay, we'll be doing now this session of the walking meditation. And I think everybody should know the instructions for the walking meditation. You have a walkway, could be 10, 12, 15 steps. And you walk slowly, but not extremely slowly, moderately slowly, at an even pace, paying attention to each step, right step, left step, and observing each step in the two phases of pushing, which is bringing the foot forward, and then placing, putting the foot on the ground. Pushing, placing, pushing, placing. And as you place the foot on the ground, you especially note the contact sensation of the foot as it touches the ground. When you come to the end of the walkway, then you make the mental observation, stopping, stopping. Then you stand for a moment and you observe the body in the standing position, standing, standing. Then mindfully you turn around, turning, 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 till you're facing the opposite direction. Then again, you pause, note the body, standing, standing, and then you walk back to the starting point. And this way you go back and forth. Again, thoughts will arise. Let the thoughts come, let them go. But keep the mindfulness centered on the act of walking, centered on or fixed, established on each step in the two phases of pushing, placing, pushing, placing. Okay, we can start the walk. And then we come back. Let me just look at the schedule. Yeah, we should be back in our seats at 3:30. Testing 1, 2. Okay, the period of sitting meditation in the mid or late afternoon is sometimes a period when the mind tends to be overcome by the hindrances, the opposing hindrances of either dullness and drowsiness, or on the other side, restlessness. So if that happens, then we have to use the appropriate remedy for it. And sometimes just focusing exclusively on the breath is not sufficient. So if you find that you're overcome by one or another of these hindrances, these are some of the remedies that can be used. I mentioned earlier, one thing that can be done if you have the problem with drowsiness, you can keep by the side of your meditation seat maybe an ice pack in a towel with an ice pack, or a bowl of some cold water, icy water. And if you get drowsy, then you can put the ice pack over the face, or just splash some of the icy water over the face. But another thing that can be used, another technique that can be used within the framework of meditation, is temporarily to put the breath aside and choose a few what we call contact points. These were, or touch points, places where the body is making contact. And what you do is to run through these contact points in a cycle a few times. So let me give you some examples. In the position where I'm sitting. Okay, so I might choose as my contact points the touch of the buttocks against the seat. Taking first the right buttock, left, then to the left buttock, then the knees touching the mat. Right knee, left knee. Then take the touch of the right hand over the left hand, and then come back to the touch of the right buttock, left buttock, right knee, left knee, hands touching each other. Doing that a few cycles of the contact points, going fairly quickly. You don't delay on them, but go through them quickly. 3 or 4 times, 3 or 4 cycles, then come back to the breath. So that is a method, one of the methods for dispelling drowsiness, because that method activates the mind. It forces the mind to become alert and observant. So the contact points that I mentioned are the ones that are particularly noticeable to me. And depending on the way you sit, you might have different contact points. But what you do is sort of look at your sitting position and choose. I chose 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 contact points. You might choose even more, maybe at most 7. 7 contact points, and you run through them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That is if you have the problem with drowsiness. If you have the problem with restlessness, many thoughts are starting to run through the mind. What you can do is tentatively, again, you put aside the attention, the breath is the object of meditation, and you take the mind itself as the object. You could start off by just turning the focus inwardly upon the mind and observing sort of asking the question, what's going on in the mind? And watching as the thoughts arise, just like you are a cat trying to catch a mouse, and the mouse is hiding behind the wall, and there's a mouse hole, an opening at the foot of the wall, and the cat is crouched in front of the mouse hole, watching for the mouse to stick its head out. So you are watching the door of the mind, the channel through which thoughts flow into the mind. And when thoughts arise, you just note thought has come and it's gone. Then watch for the next thought. If many thoughts are coming rapidly, one after another, just watch the flow of thoughts, till after a few minutes they'll settle down. Then you can come back to the breath. Okay, so that's a method for dealing with restlessness or mental agitation. Okay, so let us go back now into our sitting. Start off with the breath, and the breath, remember, it's always the primary object. But when these obstacles arise, then you have to use these special antidotes to deal with them. For dullness and drowsiness, either some splashing some cold water on the face or running through the contact points. If the problem is restlessness, then putting aside the breath and watching the flow of thoughts. Okay, so let us start our sitting. And what we're going to give special attention to in this sitting, as we're focusing on the breath, is the relative length of the breath. This is one of the paired exercises mentioned in the Satipatthana Sutta. When breathing in long, one knows I breathe in long. When breathing out long, one knows I breathe out long. When breathing in short, one knows I breathe in short. When breathing out short, one knows I breathe out short. Don't try to identify every single breath. For the most part, you just keep the attention on the simple in-breath and out-breath. But from time to time, if there's an especially slow and long breath, you note that is a long breath. If there is especially short breath, then you note that is a short breath. And you might try for some time, actually, continuously noting the relative length or shortness of the breath, but don't become too obsessed with that. The main point is to focus, to develop the present moment awareness of the breath, to anchor, to ground mindfulness in the immediate present experience, not to be entangled in mental labels and designations. Okay, you can relax now. And as usual, we rub the palms, warm them up, then over the face, top of the head, top of the head, back of the head, back of the neck, shoulders, then down the lower back to the buttocks, then down the thighs to the knees, and then the feet. Okay, we'll have a little break now, a tea break or juice break, whatever you wish. And we will resume, well, let us say we resume at 4:35. So you have a little longer time for the tea break. And when we come back, then we'll have a little Dhamma talk, and then we can take some questions and discussion. Okay, so let us take our break. Test, whoops, testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're ready to resume.
Yes, Bhante. Yes, Bhante.
Can we go?
Yes, Bhante.
Okay. Yeah, I want to share my screen. But also to be able to keep, that's what I want, this one. And I do this as a pin, spotlight, and no, not that one. Yeah, I want to, not the main camera, I want to, yeah, but I want to show, okay, so we'll use this one. Yeah, this is the one I wanted to make bigger. Yeah, okay. And I can make it bigger like this with a nice background. Is this okay now? The image is bigger so that it's not just a tiny little thumbnail. Ivan?
Yes, Bhante.
Okay, so the image is bigger.
Bhante, so we are seeing half. So we are only seeing bullet point number 2, line first and second.
Yeah, you're just seeing the first 2 lines.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I've tried to, yeah, I have to make it smaller, my image smaller. Okay, so now let us begin. So what we're going to do in this talk is look at some of the aspects that the Satipatthana Sutta mentions in regard to the practice, first of contemplation of the body in general, and then move specifically into the section on mindfulness of breathing. Because some of the later stages in the mindfulness of breathing we will be taking up in the evening sessions. Okay, so what I'm going to first focus on is the general statement about what is involved in the Satipatthana practice of contemplation of the body. And so we have the first sentence is that here the monk, or we could say any practitioner, dwells contemplating the body and the body, ardent, clearly comprehending and mindful, having put away covetousness and dejection in regard to the world. The first sort of problem that arises out of this sentence, and there's always been something of a puzzle to almost everybody who reads it, is the expression, the way it's translated, contemplating the body in the body. And similarly, we have feelings in feelings, contemplating mind in mind, dhammas in dhammas. So what is meant by the body in the body? And there are various interpretations of this. And I would actually maybe retranslate this section in such a way that we would read, here the monk or the practitioner, in regard to the body, dwells as one who contemplates the body. So in regard to or relation to the body, one dwells contemplating the body. So in other words, when we take the sentence in this way, there's nothing particularly mysterious, enigmatic about the statement. It's what the text is then saying is that the way we relate to these 4 domains of experience, we have the totality of experience is here sort of dissected into 4 domains: the body, feelings, states of mind, and various phenomena, various aspects of the teaching, or different phenomena covered by the teaching. So those are 4 domains of experience. And the way it's asking me to unmute myself. I don't think I want to do that. So the way we relate to these domains of experience is by contemplating them. So the way we relate to the body as a practitioner of the Buddha's teaching is by contemplating the body. The ordinary person, say, without the training in the Buddha's teaching, relates to the body by decorating it, making it beautiful, buying beautiful, fashionable clothes, wearing the fashionable clothes, putting on makeup, and going out and enjoying oneself the way maybe you saw some videos or news reports about the revelers, the spring break revelers in Florida over the last couple of weekends. They are dwelling in relation to the body, but not by contemplating the body, but by indulging the body, enjoying themselves in worldly enjoyments. But the way a dedicated practitioner of the Buddha Dhamma relates to the body is by contemplating the body. And the way one contemplates the body is characterized or qualified by 3 important terms, which are pointing to 3 mental faculties, 3 sort of factors of the Buddha's training. So these are indicated by the words ardent, clearly comprehending, and mindful. The word ardent in Pali is atapi, which is based on the verbal root, which has the idea, suggests the idea of heat. And so this is the heat of energy, the heat of effort, the effort that one invests in undertaking this practice of contemplating the body. Because as you probably all experience in the course of the day, you're not going to be successful in contemplating the body if you just relax in a beach chair and put a glass of lemonade by your side and enjoy the sights of the birds and whatever is passing in front of your eyes. But you have to put in effort, diligent effort. That's why the Buddha says that appamado amatassa amata padang, that diligence or heedfulness is the way to the deathless, the path to the deathless. So we need diligence or effort, right effort indicated by the word ardent. Then I'm going to jump over this one and go to mindful. So what we are doing with our effort, with our energy, is putting in the energy, the effort to be mindful, to be attending to our experience as it is occurring in the immediate present. And we are using as the foundation, as the basis for developing this present moment awareness, the attention to the breath, because the breath is something that's occurring, inescapably occurring in the present. So we are putting in the energy, the effort to arouse and to sustain mindfulness. And mindfulness, it's very difficult to find words to describe mindfulness. It's something like a flavor of a particular type of preparation, a particular type of dish. maybe you could say the flavor of the pineapple. If somebody has never tasted pineapple, there's just no words to describe it. But when you eat pineapple, you know the flavor. You can distinguish it from the taste of apples, oranges, peaches, pears, and so on. And so, but we could say that mindfulness is the characteristic, maybe we could say, of being an open, receptive awareness of what is taking place in our present experience, opening up the awareness from a kind of detached position of observation, looking at the experience without external aims, without projects, apart from the task of being observant to see what is happening. And so being receptive, alert, awake, with this soft and gentle, open awareness. So that is the aspect of mindfulness. And then along with mindfulness comes the quality of knowing what is taking place, clearly knowing what is going on in one's experience. And that is indicated in Pali by the word sampajano, which we translate in English, clear comprehension. But if one knows anything about Pali, one could see this part here, jhano, is related to the verb janati. Janati means to know. And so jhano indicates the act of knowing, and one is knowing this clearly and precisely what is taking place. And it is from that clear comprehension that panya, or wisdom, will unfold and will emerge and unfold. Okay, so this is the task in practicing a foundation of mindfulness, to bring together energy, mindfulness, and clear knowledge, clear knowing. And then we have still another phrase or expression, having put away covetousness. Again, the English renderings are always imperfect. Covetousness and dejection in regard to the world. In Pali, the two things that have to be removed are abhijja and domanassa. Now, if you look at this phrase, this expression, two, three, I think, okay, we're back on. Okay, thank you, Jason. If one takes this phrase very literally, it seems that first one puts away covetousness and dejection, and then one takes up the contemplation of the body. But I think that would be a misunderstanding, a misinterpretation. What I would say instead is that the process of contemplating the body with energy, with mindfulness, and with clear understanding, that extended process of contemplation is the method or means by which one puts away covetousness and dejection. And when the practice of contemplation comes to its fullness, to its successful, to when it succeeds, then one has put away covetousness and dejection. Then one dwells detached in regard to worldly phenomena. That's the concluding phrase in many of the passages in the sutta. He dwells independent, not clinging to anything in the world. Okay, so what is meant by these two terms, covetousness and dejection? Yeah, the word covetousness may be not so good here. In fact, in my more recent translations, I've replaced it with longing. Or even you could say it's almost a synonym for craving. So this would be longing or craving, and it can be the craving, worldly craving, craving for sensual pleasures, but it could also be the craving for, in meditation, special experiences. When am I going to experience this? How can I experience that? Why did that person achieve this and I haven't achieved that? So any kind of intense longing or craving which disturbs and disrupts the continuity of contemplation, we could say is comprised under this word abhijja. And the counterpart, the negative counterpart of this longing or craving is domanassa. Some translators render this as grief, but that's not so accurate. Here I use dejection, or we could even say sadness or discontent. And so it's any kind of feeling of disturbance or dissatisfaction with one's situation or one's practice. And so when you feel upset about anything, you feel a tinge of sadness, tinge of unhappiness, a kind of discontent, a discontent which might in turn trigger longing and craving in order to quench or eliminate the discontent. So that comes under domanassa. And there can also be spiritual manifestations of this domanassa. When you don't achieve the goal that you were aspiring for, you don't achieve the kind of deep samadhi or brilliant insights, then you feel upset and discontent with your practice. And then that upsets the continuity and the consistency of the contemplation. And so one has to go on contemplating the body with energy, mindfulness, and clear comprehension, not being derailed, not being pulled away by longing and craving, either for worldly pleasures or for spiritual achievements, or by dejection and sadness because of worldly disappointments or disappointments in one's practice. Okay, so these are the factors that go into establishing the contemplation. And now we're going to go down to the section on mindfulness of breathing. And I'm going to treat it rather briefly. One could treat it in detail, but just to see what we have been covering in the course of the day. So here it speaks about a bhikkhu, a monk, who goes to a secluded dwelling place, the forest, the root of a tree, or an empty hut. Here we are sitting in a meditation hall, and you are sitting in a room in your home, which can count as an empty hut. And first, we have some suggestions on assuming the correct posture. And in the ancient Indian yogic way of practice, one sits with the legs crossed. Doesn't have to be full lotus, but any way of crossing the legs to maintain a firm base. And then one sets the body erect. This is basically what I've been saying at the beginning of each session. You keep the body upright, straight and firm, not stiff or rigid. And then one establishes mindfulness in front of one, but actually, I don't establish mindfulness out 6 inches away from my face or 8 inches away from my face. But what it really means is establishing mindfulness in the body, what I call this global or totalistic type of mindfulness. And then when the mindfulness is firmly established, then one directs that mindfulness to the breath. And so then mindful one breathes in, mindful one breathes out. In a sense, you can say that this is the core of the practice, the essence of the practice, all expressed in that 1 or 2 phrases, being simply mindful of the in-breath, mindful of the out-breath. So that is the starting point and the essence of the practice. But then it's elaborated in certain ways. And I brought in some of these elaborations in the second afternoon session. So when you breathe in long, then you know I am breathing in long. When you breathe out long, you know I am breathing out long. And similarly, when breathing in short, one knows one breathes in short. When breathing out short, one knows one breathes out short. So we have here, the key phrase is knowing. One knows what is taking place. So the knowing, and you could see the way it's indicated by a little quotation that encapsulates the experience one is undergoing. So this is the counterpart to what I call the mental note. So I say that when you're going to breathe in, you make the mental note mindful, breathing in, in. When you're about to breathe out, you make the mental note mindful, out, out, out. And then one can elaborate upon that by noting the length of the breath. But what's important here is the knowing. This goes beyond the simple mindfulness, but one observes, notes, distinguishes, conceptualizes what is taking place. So the practice of mindfulness of breathing is not just a matter of entering a kind of non-conceptual experience of the breath, but one observes, notes, designates what is taking place with the breath. Breathing in long, breathing in and out long, breathing in and out short. Then come some further stages, which I think what I'm going to do is to pause here and bring in these stages in the evening, because we're going to undertake the practice of these stages in the way I understand them, with my own interpretation of them. And so when we come to them, then we'll come back to the text and explore how we can apply these words of the text to our own practice. So at this point, maybe we could open up the floor to questions. And let's see how we do. Yeah, if you have questions, the way you pose the question, the way you show that you want to ask the question, you should be seeing someplace a little hand symbol. So you click that hand symbol, and then I will receive a note that you've raised your hand. So I see E and D. with a raised hand? Okay, Ian?
Yes, there we go. Now I'm unmuted. Thank you, Bhante. I have a practical question of the nature of the questions we were dealing with earlier. I have considerable difficulty sitting up straight for a long period of time without some kind of support for my back. My body is tall and skinny, kind of like yours. I have pretty severe scoliosis. I also damaged my back, hurt my back when I was much younger, which weakened it. And so I find it's quite a distraction as I meditate. I keep slowly slouching down more and more, generally without noticing it until I'm very much slouched. And then it's uncomfortable and I have to go, oh, and sit up and rectify the whole thing again. And it's just a cycle that goes over and over. So what I'm wondering is, it's a pretty universal instruction to sit for meditation without any kind of back support, without sitting with your back against the back of a chair or against a wall or anything like that.
No.
I wonder if that is for any reason other than so we won't get drowsy and fall asleep. Because I have a very upright chair, and if I sit with my back against that, it prevents that slouching effect, but I also find it's a little more difficult to concentrate on my breath. I wonder if you have any kind of insight about that.
I would say in that case, you use the chair, or you use the backrest of the chair to support the body in an upright position. And don't worry about the fact that the sort of general advice given for those who don't have back problems would be not to rely upon a back support. But if you need the back support to be able to sit upright without slouching, then rely on the back support. Is that okay? Does that make sense? I didn't get.
There we go. Thank you. Whoop. Yes, that makes sense, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah, what you could do, maybe could do is the back of the chair, is it padded or like a wooden back?
It is padded. What I have is an office chair that can lean back and be way too comfortable, but it's very adjustable. So I adjust it so that the back is very much upright, and without a certain amount of mindfulness, I might fall over forwards. But yeah, it seems to work well for that. What do you think?
Yeah, use it that way. Yeah, don't worry about it. Just go ahead and use it.
That's wonderful. I really appreciate that, Bhante. That's a big thing that's been plaguing me for a couple of years now.
You have to be practical. Not the instructions and the text are not intended to be narrow and rigid and exclusive, but there are general instructions, but we have to find our own way of sort of finding what works best and most effective for us.
Agreed. Thank you very much, Bhante.
Okay, any other questions?
Wonderful.
Were the instructions also clear? Maybe I could ask a question. In the last session of meditation, I gave some instructions for dealing with drowsiness by attending to the touch or contact points, and dealing with restlessness by putting aside the breath and directly observing the flow of thoughts in the mind. Did anybody try that? And I wonder if those methods proved to be helpful. if anybody wants to volunteer their own experience with that. I see one hand has gone up. Miriam in California. I think you can speak now. Miriam?
Okay, here we go. Am I unmuted now?
Okay, now you're on.
Okay, now I'm unmuted. Yes, I wasn't allowed to unmute myself. Yes, Bante, it was wonderful. At one point, I realized I'm getting into this mechanical thing, and I started using the contact point.
Yeah.
And I repeated them like 3-4 times, and
Yeah.
I was back again on being alert. So that was wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, so the contact points were used. She used it to sort of break up the automatic autopilot mechanical
Yes.
following of the breath.
Yes.
Anybody have some problem with the restlessness, the too much thinking, and use the observation of the mind? Nobody? Anybody else use the contact points? Okay, somebody named Samir. I think you're
This is
unmuted.
Samir,
Okay.
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, the technique helped, but this restlessness where the thoughts keep flooding in constantly, that seems to be a permanent problem, at least for me. And sometimes if I'm
Okay,
not careful,
not catching the voice so easily. Let's start over again.
the restlessness is a real, it continues to be a problem. And
Yeah.
while the technique you suggested has helped a lot, I still find it hard to stay focused, where sometimes the thoughts just bundle themselves and almost start daydreaming, and then you almost have to snap yourself back into being alert again. I don't know if that's common for a first-time practitioner, or if there was perhaps something I was doing wrong.
Yeah, sometimes one just has to be patient with the technique and not expect to get quick success with it, but keep on applying it over and over. And what I found, I mean, I can't speak for everybody, what I found when there's this restlessness and a lot of thoughts flowing through the mind, and then turning to observe the thoughts, then one is establishing the mindfulness in the present. So even if the thoughts continue to flow through the mind, as long as you are observing them and just watching the thoughts flow by, even not only the thoughts, but even the mood of restlessness, if you're observing that and noting it, you have your mindfulness established in the present. So it's just a matter of continuing to apply that method of observation patiently, and in time, the thoughts may subside, but even if they don't subside, but you still have present moment awareness, mindfulness established in the present.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, I see Rachel Padipada. And let me ask you to unmute. Okay, I think
Thank you.
you're unmuted.
For me, my question is about thoughts occurring which triggers a memory and then triggers emotion. And that entire process happens so quickly.
Yeah.
Suddenly the mind is in a place of anger, and then the body starts responding.
The body
How
starts.
does one,
Yeah.
so the body starts getting tense, the
Yeah.
heart starts racing, and that
Yeah.
whole process occurs so quickly. Can you give some
Some advice for dealing with that? Okay, what I would say, if that happens,
manage that process.
okay, put the breath aside temporarily and turn the attention to what I would call the whole body awareness, and just dwell observing the body in its totality.
I'm
And
sorry, I can't hear.
excuse me? Okay, so just observe what is taking place in the body, noting whatever processes are taking place until that disturbance settles down enough to return to the breath. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, you try that and see
Because
how
if I'm
it works.
able to just place my attention on the breath, if I can place my attention on the breath, that itself would calm the body.
Yeah, sometimes it's not effective to try to continue to force the attention on the breath when disturbances take place through memories that trigger emotions, that disturbances take place in the body. You can note the emotion briefly, but then come back to the body and just dwell observing what is taking place in the body. And then as you're observing the body, then that disturbance will hopefully gradually settle down. Then you can go back to the breath. And tomorrow we'll be
Okay.
doing more with tomorrow we'll be doing more with full body awareness. And so we'll see how this method will work for you tomorrow. Okay, we take
Okay.
Nehru.
Thank you, Bhante.
Yeah. And then after that, CJ Wang. And then we'll have to break. Okay. I've asked you to unmute. Okay.
Thank you, Bhante. My question is, as with the age, does it affect the sitting exercise, like sitting of the meditation? Because
Yeah, I'm not getting the sound very clearly and distinctly.
okay,
Let me see if I have my.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, I think I have to use a headphone to get the voice clearly.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, try again.
So my question is, like 10 or 15 years ago, I was able to sit for longer hours, and what I experienced, my quality of meditation was much better at that time. But as I am aging, so I see myself not able to sit for longer. Does aging has some effect on the on the practice?
Does aging have some effect on what?
On practice.
Uh, I would say not to worry too much if you can't sit as long as you were able to sit in the past. May I ask how old you are now?
I'm 54 now.
54.
Yeah.
I would say not to worry too much about not being able to sit as long as you were able to sit in the past, as long as you could sit long enough for a good solid session. And if you feel that you have to readjust the posture to continue to fill out the sitting, to complete this session of sitting, then readjust the posture. You don't have to maintain the body in an unmoving position.
Right. Yes.
Does that make sense?
That's right. Yeah. Thank you so much, Bhante.
Okay, then we take CJ Wang.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I do cross leg when I do the meditation, but after a while, the leg will hurts. I just wondering any good way to cure that problem.
What I say is that if the leg starts to get painful, don't immediately change the position just to get away from the pain. Because the way you acquire the ability to sit longer is by being able to endure the pain. And as you get experienced in sitting more and more, then you learn to tolerate the pain, and then your legs and back becomes accustomed to sitting for longer periods. But you shouldn't torture yourself in the sitting position. So if the sitting cross-legged becomes very painful, you can readjust the sitting position, just readjust the legs. And if that is not successful, you might stand up for a minute or two. Or maybe you don't need 2 minutes. Stand up for a minute, even lift the legs up and down a little bit, and then sit down and again sit in the cross-legged position.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, we could fit in Catherine McLaughlin, and then we'll break.
Yes, I periodically, when I meditate, am focused on in-breath, out-breath.
Yeah.
And without thoughts, I will, it happened today, break out in a sweat and
Yeah.
water will drip down my face.
Yeah.
Another time, saliva will build up in my mouth and I almost feel as if I'm drooling. Are these just common reactions? It seems that there's no thought, it's just arises.
Yeah, I would say that probably the meditation triggers different processes within the body that result in the sweating and the saliva building up in the mouth. So don't really be so worried about that. Just notice it, but just go on with the practice.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we will now break. And I want to also state, again, I said this earlier before the lunch break, but try to maintain the mindfulness and clear comprehension in all the activities. Don't think, okay, the meditation is finished now for the afternoon. Now I can just do whatever I want and act very, casually and impulsively. But sustain the mindfulness in whatever one is doing. If you're taking a light meal, and I suggest in the evening, just a light meal, not a full dinner. If you go to the bathroom, if you take a refreshing drink, whatever, try to sustain the mindfulness. And a good way to ensure that the mindfulness is maintained is to note whatever one is doing. It doesn't have to be very minute, very detailed, precise noting, but in a general way, use the noting to be aware of what one is doing. So if we go to tomorrow, I will discuss the clear comprehension practice. If you go to the bathroom, you make the mental note going to the bathroom. If it's peeing, you notice I'm making pee. If it's the other thing, note you're aware I'm making the other thing. When you're eating, as I explained earlier, you can observe the act of eating in the different stages of lifting up the food, putting into the mouth, chewing, tasting, and swallowing. 5 aspects of eating. If you have to talk, try to avoid talking, but if you have to, do it mindfully, aware of what's going on in your mind, and try to keep the conversation short, not to be entangled in a long, drawn-out conversation, and certainly not arguments and debates. Okay, so we will come back at 7 p.m., and then we will continue to explore the mindfulness of breathing, going into some of the later practices mentioned in the sutta.
Bande?
Yeah.
Bande, a quick question. Maybe Bande consider chanting after the break?
Oh, I think we had the break. I'm sorry. We have the, let me just, it's in the schedule. I don't.
Yes, Bande.
Whoops. Oh, we're supposed to do the chanting now. Yeah, I'm sorry. That's right. Yeah, I have to keep the schedule, the printout of the schedule in front of me. Yeah, so we could do the chanting now. And maybe I'll ask Venerable Mangala to lead the chanting. I've been a little tired now of speaking. And let me just get the text file for him.
Thank you, Bande.
Okay, thank you for reminding me. Oh, you have a printout. Okay. You can sit here. I will go walk.
Okay, everyone. So we'll do our evening service right now. Put your hands up. So we'll begin at the top of the page with the Namo Tassa. Okay, perfect. Put your hands up in Anjali as a sign of respect for the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. And we'll begin with Namo Tassa 3 times. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Iti piso Bhagava Araham Samma Sambuddho Vijacharana Sampanno Sugato Lokavidu Anuttaro Puresa Dhamma Sarati Satta Deva Manusana Putto Bhagavati. Namo Tassa Samma Sambuddhassa. Ye cha Buddha Tita cha Ye cha Buddha Anagata Pachupanna cha Ye Buddha Aham Vandami Sabada. Nati me saranang anyam Buddho me saranang varang Etena sacha vajena Hotu me jaya mangalam. Uttamangena vandeham Padapangsu Buddheo kaleto doso Buddho kamatu mama Buddhang yavani bana pariyantang saranang gacchami. Okay, homage to the Dhamma. Swakato bhagavata dhammo Sanditiko akaliko hihipasiko upanaiko pachatang veditabo vinyuhiti. Namo tassa niyanikasa dhammasa ye cha dhamma tita cha ye cha dhamma anagata Pachupanna chaye dhamma ahang vandami sabada. Nati me saranang anyang dhammo me saranang varam. Etena satcha vajena hotu me jaya mangalam. Uttamangena vandeham Dhamman cha tividam varam Dhammeyo kaleto doso Dhammo kamatutam mama Dhammang yavani bana pariyantang Saranang gacchami. Again, homage to the Sangha. Supatipanno bhagavato savaka sango Ujupatipanno bhagavato savaka sango Nyayapatipanno bhagavato savaka sango Samicipatipanno bhagavato savaka sango Yadidang chattari purisa yugani atta purisa pugala esa bhagavato savaka sango ahuneyo pahuneyo dakineyo anjali karaniyo anuttarang punyaketang lokasati. Namo tassa atta arya pugala mahasangasa ye cha sangatita cha ye cha sangha nagata pachupanna cha ye sangha ahang vandami sabada. Nati me saranang anyang sango me saranang varam. Etena sacha vajena hotu me jaya mangala. Uttamangena vandehang sangancha duviduttamak. Sangeyo kaleto doso sango kamatutang mama. Sangang yavani bana pariyantang saranang gacchami. Okay, homage to the three symbols. Vandami chetiyang sabbang sappatani supatititang saririka dhatu mahabodhing bhutarupang sakalang sabam. Imaya dhamma nudhamma patipattiya bodhang bhujin. Imaya dhamma nudhamma patipattiya dhammang bhujin. Imaya dhamma nudhamma patipattiya sanghang bhujin. Okay, so we'll move on to the Metta Sutta. Paraniyamatta Sutta. Karaniya atta kusalena yantam santam padang abhisamecha. Sakujucha sujucha suvachocha samudonatimani. Santu sakocha suvarocha hapakichocha sahalukavuti. Sandindriyocha nipakocha appagabbo kulesu anugidu. Nacha kudang samachari kinchi yena vinyu pare upavade. Sukino wa kimino hontu sabbe satta bhavanta sukitata. Ye kinchipana buddhati tasavatarawa anavasesa. Digawa eva mahantava majjimarasaka nukatula. Dittava eva ditta ye chadure vasanti avidure. Bhutava sambhave seva sabbe sata bhavanta sukhitata. Naparo parang nikupeta nati manyeta katancinam kanchi. Biaro sana patiga sanyam jnanamanya sadukamicheya. Mata yatanyang putang ayusae kaputang anurake. Evam pisa babhutesu manasang bhavare aparimanam. Metancha sabbalokasmi manasang bhavare aparimanam. Uddang adocha tiriyancha asabhaddang averang asapattang. Tiptancharam nisino va sayano va yavatassa vigatamidu. Etang sating aditeya brahmametang viharang idamahu. Titincha silava dhasanena sampanno. Kame suvene agedang nahi jatu gabbaseyang. Punareti. Etena satchavajena sotu te hotu sabada. Etena satchavajena sabarogo vinasatu. Etena satchavajena hotu te jayamangalam. Okay, we're going to the blessing verses. Sabityo vivajantu sabarogo vinasatu. Mate bhavantantarayo sukhi digayo bhava. Bhavatu sabba mangalam rakantu sabba devata. Sabba buddha nubhavena satasoti bhavantu te. Bhavatu sabba mangalam rakantu sabba devata. Sabba dhamma nubhavena sadasoti bhavantu te. Bhavatu sabba mangalam rakantu sabba devata. Sabba sangha nubhavena sadasoti bhavantu te. Okay, let's chant the merits. Akasata chabhumata deva naga mahitika. Punyantang namoditva chiram rakantu sasanam. Akasata chabhumata deva naga mahitika. Punyantang anamoditva juram rakantu te sam. Akasata chabumata devanaga mahitikam. Punyantang anamoditva juram rakantu mam param. Oh, come on. Aspiration. Imena punyakamena mame bala samagam. Sattang samagamo hotu yavani banapattiya. Idang me punnang astakavayahang hotu. Sabaduka pamuchatoti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, so we'll be getting back together again at 7 p.m. So let's bow to the Buddha 3 times. First bow. Second bow. Third bow.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu,
Sadhu, sadhu,
sadhu,
sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu.
Thank
Sadhu,
you. Sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Sadhu, sadhu.
sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Oh.